The restaurants you love, the food you crave, and the people that make it all happen. We tell their stories on the Paper Trails podcast with Albemarle Paper Supply.
What's going on, guys? How are you? And we are back, Paper Trails podcast, season 3, episode 2. I'm your host, Nick Caligari-Mitros, and I have the privilege and honor of having a really good friend of mine, Manny Flores, come in to chat with us here briefly about his start, his career in the food business, and all the projects that he has going on today and in the future, and we're super pumped to have him. And so, anyway, if you guys have not subscribed to all of our channels, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, check it out. You know, support the channel, share, and we're super excited to have you guys part of the show today. And so, anyway, with that, Manny, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. I'm really excited to just learn a little bit about, or I guess more of your history, how you got into the food space, restaurateur, founder. And so why don't we start there? You know, for everybody that maybe that doesn't know your background yet, obviously you have Que Hospitality, you know, Que Fresa, Que Onda here in the Charlotte area and the suburbs, but you didn't start here.
No.
Okay. So let's take it back a couple of years.
Absolutely.
Where you're from, give us a little bit of history, give everybody some context that they may know the restaurants, they've been here, they've eaten here, they've gotten some you know, great service and food, but take it back a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about, you know, all the beginnings.
Well, first of all, it's my privilege.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Nick.
Thank you.
Wow, it's so many beginnings. I always like to say, so far I have 3 beginnings. The OG out of all of them is, you know, I'm from El Salvador.
Nice.
A very small town, probably grew up with 100 people.
Okay.
And I grew up in late 70s, early 80s in El Salvador. I was there for about 5 or 6 years while my parents kind of made their life here. Okay. For myself and my brother, and my 2 sisters came on later. It was a bad period. It was a civil war, unrest. Saw a lot of things that a child shouldn't see. But fortunately, my parents, very hardworking to this day, they still are, and I think that's where I get my work ethic from, and entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
They had come here many years while I spent in El Salvador getting my documentation correct with immigration.
Yep.
Finally made it out here when I was about 5, 6 years old, somewhere in there, and grew up in the Washington, D.C. area.
Okay. Is that where your parents were already?
Yes. They had migrated to Washington, D.C. like so many other Salvadorans, and my town specifically being in one of the 13 states called La Unión. Surf City is, we have a privilege now to call. And my little town, it's a huge story behind that. My mom does a lot of nonprofit, helps a lot of students there.
I love that.
Has a home in that little town that's probably over 1,000, 1,500 now.
Yes.
And what they're known for is the migration.
Okay.
That half of that town migrated here to the U.S. and specifically Washington, D.C. So I had the privilege to be in Washington, D.C. for 35 years. I can't believe it's 35 years, somewhere in there. And
so you grew up there, like the majority of
grade
was
school.
DC.
Grade school.
Okay.
Ended up going to high school in Rockville, Maryland, because the streets were too rough.
Gotcha.
My parents wanted me to focus in my education, so commuted 2 hours to go to high school.
Wow.
2 hours. Had to wake up at 5:30 in the morning. You know, it still humbles me.
I think that's a pretty good. I think that's like a telling sign of how much definitely immigrants want the best for their kids and their education. Absolutely. 2 hours.
2 hours. Washington, D.C., you know, elementary school was okay.
Yeah.
Middle school, started getting in trouble. My mom was like, that's it, high school, you're going to Rockville, Maryland. My grandmother lives there to this day, and the school is in Montgomery County, right north of Washington, D.C., to this day are tremendous, kind of like saying Union County in Charlotte.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, you know, that's kind of where my parents wanted me to go. And I said, okay, well, 2 hours it is, and 2 hours back. But it, looking back, like I said, it really humbles me, and it really gave me a fresh start. It's round 2 of who I am, and because I was going the wrong path. My parents were hardworking. They were rarely home. My sisters came later. And growing up in Washington, D.C., I had the privilege of working with entrepreneurs. First of all, my parents.
Yeah.
My mom owned 3 beauty salons.
Wow.
A restaurant, and now a grocery store. So I was always around accounting.
Yeah.
I was always around, people that made big decisions for others, provided for other families.
Business, the public, the whole thing.
Public, and my mom is super connected with the mayor in Washington, D.C. I mean, she's like El Salvador walking. When you see her, you see her as El Salvador, the face of the country.
I love that.
And it really showed me how to appreciate everything in life, from family, which is huge, to my culture, to raising my own family, money and what a penny does, a hard-earned penny, and being around restaurants like that, I got to know a lot of people, politics, other restaurateurs, other entrepreneurs, really good friends that are still to this day very close friends of mine, and so forth. So round 2 starts, right? And high school in Rockville, Maryland, which was the suburbs, predominantly white American, and it really gave me an opportunity to learn other cultures, as opposed to, Washington, D.C. is very Hispanic and Black American. Okay. So I got to speak English properly. My slang started to go away. Yeah. My English started to get better. My grades started to get better. Sports. Yeah. More responsibility. Got my first car, brand new. I was pumped. Honda Civic CX.
Nice.
1993. I remember that car because they actually got stolen when I souped it up.
I
used to do a little bit of racing growing up. But and that, it was instilled in me that I have a younger brother. I'm the oldest of 4. Okay. I have a younger brother and 2 younger sisters that I had to somehow translate that back to them, because my parents were always at work. Sure. So I was always at home. I was kind of the person that was responsible for them. And then eventually business started to get better. We started to get more help. My parents started spending a little bit more time at home. And so it was time for me to go get a job. And I desperately wanted a job. I wanted some money in my pocket, plus I'm paying for this car. And that's kind of when I got into a little bit of the music business when I was 15, 16 years old. Okay. I worked for one of my mom's close friends' record store. Okay. And selling records, cassettes, and CDs. And music stuck.
So that's what, 90s now?
This is about 92, 93, 94, right around my high school years. And so I had the opportunity to work with another entrepreneur that had this music shop and also had nightclubs. So at 15, 16 years old, I was dropping off CDs at 9, 10 p.m. at night, and ended up sticking around a little bit, learning the DJ business as well. So ended up, that stuck, the DJ business. So I did a lot of mobile stuff. So again, just applying my entrepreneurship, got a business card, got an LLC, started distributing just guerrilla marketing just by hand, and then started getting gigs, $200, $300 gigs. That's huge.
Yeah, of course.
While I'm still working, still going to school, and being a role model for my brother and my sisters, and my family in general. So again, just starting to get that idea of work for yourself. Yeah. Work for yourself.
Did you at all? Were you at the restaurant at all? I know you were doing the music thing and the record thing.
With my parents, right after school, we would go help my mom close the shop down. But after school activities and stuff like that, I got the tail end of it. Okay. But I got to see a lot of the back end of it as well. And on the weekends, I got to see the beauty salons. Okay. And the restaurants was a little bit far out, but in Virginia, so I didn't get to do that much. Plus, the restaurant came a little bit later. Then I had the opportunity to make a little bit more money, and another friend of my mom, Jose Andres, there was an opportunity to run food at a restaurant. I had never worked in a restaurant, so I was like, let me give this a shot. They're saying that my cousins work there. They're saying they make really good money, more than I'm making at the record shop. Yeah. Plus, I was, later years in high school, and I needed to spend more time in my education and homework and that kind of stuff. So I said, all right, let's start running a couple nights a week. And running food came naturally to me, and started working with Jose Andres. If you know Jose Andres, you know how much of a humanitarian he is and an entrepreneur he is. He started from the bottom too. He had never had anything himself, but he went to El Bulli with Adrián Ferrá and those famous chefs in the world. And so he wanted to apply that knowledge and taught all of us growing up, my friends, my cousins, and myself.
So working for Jose was your first taste in the food business?
Yep.
No pun intended. Actually, that pun was intended. But okay, so what kind of restaurant? Give us some context at like the first things that you learned kind of in the space.
So I learned how to eat.
Okay.
Really, because I had a very delicate palate. I didn't eat much.
Okay.
And that really opened up my palate to other flavors, garlic and onion. And he owns a chain now of Spanish restaurants called Jaleo.
Okay.
He also has a Mediterranean restaurant called, you would appreciate this, Turkish, Lebanese, and Greek meze is called Zaytinya.
Okay.
I think he has 2 or 3 of those now.
Okay.
And then had an opportunity with him to open up a Mexican tapas restaurant in the heart of Washington, D.C. So I think what sticks out for me with Jose Andres is, again, the entrepreneurship really opened my eyes to dining and drinking fine wine and understanding spirits.
So it was a high end?
Very high end,
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah, you go to Washington, D.C., and you ask for one of the top restaurants, they'll tell you it's Jaleo. As soon as you land, and they'll tell you right away, hey, where do I go eat? You got to go to Jaleo.
Did you start out in the kitchen or front of? I mean, how did you start out?
So, funny story about the how I started there. So originally, I had heard about it through my cousins, a little bit more money. I was a little skeptical to go into restaurant business because it was a little bit later than I'd like to stay up.
Yeah.
However, my grandfather, he now retired and lives in El Salvador. He has the same name I do, Manuel Flores. And he got sick one day. He was working for Jose Andres as a dishwasher in a garlic peeler.
Okay.
So he got sick. He had some kidney stones, and back then the operations kidney stones were kind of a big deal. So they had to, open up pretty wide. So he had to take off a couple months, but he didn't want to lose his job. He got paid really well.
Okay.
And he was like, hey, your name's Manuel Flores. Why don't you kind of take over the dishwasher area for me?
Okay.
And I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot. And I did it for about a month, washing dishes, peeling garlic, and I, absolutely hated it. I'll be really honest, because it was very fast paced, a lot of small plates, so you had a lot of plates in the dish pit area. But that really taught me, from beginnings in the restaurant. And then I said, no, I got to move on to like running food, something a little bit where I can dress better.
Yeah.
So that was with Jose Andres. I'd spent 11 years with Jose.
Wow.
Washing dishes, food runner, server, bartender. They gave me the opportunity at 22 years old to be a manager, at 23 to be a general manager of a $7 million restaurant.
Wow.
And I couldn't believe it, but they saw something in me, and I always believed in myself. I always knew how to talk myself up. And made the Bethesda, Maryland location super successful. I was the GM for about 3 or 4 years.
Wow.
That's where I met my wife, Paola. But I knew after like 9, 10, year 11, I knew that I had to do more.
Yeah.
General manager is great. I was 24, 25 years old, but I knew I had to do more because I was going to school, and I was actually going to school for architecture. And actually, did my 4 years of architecture, construction management, and CAD, computer-aided drafting. And I really thought life would take me that way.
Okay.
But it didn't. I absolutely hated it. I actually got a job in downtown D.C. working for a really big architecture firm, but it was a cubicle. And I was basically taking hand-drawn plans, commercial plans, and putting them into CAD, computer-aided drafting files. And so I would spend 10 hours in a cubicle not seeing anyone. And
you hated it.
Hated it. I said, if this is what architecture is, I just can't do it.
Yeah.
And to be an architect, it's one of the things they don't teach you in school is you're spending a lot of time by yourself. And I needed to be around people. I needed to be around my family. I needed that people come and see me. And I'm animated. I talk with my hands.
Yeah.
And all the talking that I did in a cubicle was this. And I just, this other hand just couldn't keep still. And I just said, no, I can't do it. I did it for about a year. My parents were super proud of me because of my education and really did it, on my own.
Yeah.
But then I said, no, I got to get back into restaurants. But then that's the point that I knew, all right, this is what I want to do.
Do you think seeing your family be entrepreneurs, work for themselves, have a little more control of, yes, it may be more hours, but just the little more freedom and autonomy, do you think that was instilled a little bit subconsciously inside?
Of course.
So that even with those 11 years and working for Jose and everything that you learned from him was great, but deep down you were like, man, like something's still kind of missing a little bit?
Interesting enough, even after 11 years, it still hadn't clicked that I had to work for myself. But I still knew I had to get more experience. Because I only had experience in operations, 4 walls, door to door, guest interaction, and myself. That's all the experience I had.
Gotcha.
A little bit of accounting. So I knew I had to do more. That's where my next chapter kind of took me with Richard Sandoval Restaurants, RSR. Another entrepreneur and restaurateur, a celebrity chef, but focused exclusively Mexican.
Okay. In the D.C. area?
In the D.C. area as well. So I applied, and Craigslist, out of all places, one of his directors knocked on the door and said, we really like your resume. We know Jose Andres in the area. Come and interview. Took me to New York, did an interview in his office. We hit it off. And at the end of the interview, we were talking about, what do you drink? What do you think about Mexican food? It was really not an interview. He's so nonchalant about business. And I carried some of that too, And I carried some of the stubbornness of Jose Andres, but I carried some of the looseness of Richard Sandoval. So I think that merging really taught me well, So I did 9 years with him.
Wow.
But I knew with him, after having that nonchalant, just like, man-to-man conversation, I knew that I would grow quickly. Plus, it was a company that already had 16 restaurants.
Wow.
And his vision was to take from 16 to 32. So I had the opportunity to open Tyson's Corner, Virginia location for a casual setting restaurant called La Sandia, modern Mexican, which is very similar to kind of what I do, and which stuck. Then they had the opportunity to open restaurants in Denver, Colorado, Santa Monica, San Diego, Atlanta, Philadelphia, Chicago. So I did about 16 cities with him opening restaurants.
So you were just traveling, helping launch
just
new locations.
His vision in paper, business plan, I was the one going out and doing these openings. And my background being architecture, I would be there from the beginning. So I'd say, no, this is wrong. What are you doing with this? We need an outlet here. What are you saying? Hey, the prep table doesn't have an outlet. How am I supposed to put a blender at the prep table? Those kind of things. So I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to learn it from scratch. Ended up being all the way up to his national director of operations. And I knew if I stuck around, I was going to end up being vice president, president of the company because of my beginnings with him. And he is that kind of person. You're loyal to me, it's infinity with me.
Wow.
And so that's when it clicked. And that's when I said, wow, I'm managing all these restaurants and I'm seeing the profit and loss documentation, financials. And I said, bottom line, none of his restaurants are losing money. I said, I kind of have to do it for myself. But then my family had something to do with it too. I got married, 2 boys. I was traveling a lot. I would travel Monday through Friday and home on the weekends. And when we had a big opening, I'd be away for a month. My boys were growing up, and my wife Paola would say, hey, at some point when they're in grade school, that's great.
They need
you. Gave me a great life, staying home with my kids. One of us had to work, and it was a good plan. But once they go off to school, Paola was like, I got to get back to work too. I got to do something with my life too. And so that motivated us to say, hey, we're going to open our own restaurant. Talk to Richard about it, and Richard's like, I'll fund it. I'll do the project.
Wow.
And that's when I said, you believe in me so much. Jose Andres believes in me so much. I believe in myself so much. My wife believes in me so much. I kind of want to do something on my own first before I go out and another restaurateur does something with me. So it's a partnership, right?
Yeah.
So in 2000...
Hold on 1 second. A quick question. What's the couple of things that you learned opening up all those stores, you know? Because, I mean, even you said it yourself. You knew that you wanted to get a little more experience. What was that experience? Like, what are some things, you know? Because it sounds like you had to pay your dues first. Because, you know, say there's people listening right now, Manny, that have ambitions. They want to do their own thing, whether it's roofing, landscape, dry cleaners, doesn't matter, electrical business, you know, but they may be a little, too ambitious and maybe not have all the experience. I think you understood you needed a little bit more. Hey, let me pay my dues a little bit, learn every part of the business, so when I go in, I have 100% confidence in my abilities to execute. I mean, 16 cities, all those launches. I mean, you're at that point. Yeah, at that point, you know everything as far as how to
Bibles. You know, we have a Bible, and then once we created, from the beginning, creating a concept.
Exactly.
We would have to write it. What would the experience be? What would the decor be? You know, the music. What are you talking about? The lighting. You know, the plating. Everything. We had nothing, so we had to create it. And then we had Bibles, little things, the type of screw that went into the wall, the exposed beam, everything was a Bible. Everything for him was create handbooks, create policies before you launch. And that's what I learned, is just prepare for the unexpected. Have policies and procedures in place. Have amazing business plans where it starts with the guest experience, all the way down, trickling to your team members. I don't call them employees; they're my team, you know. And that's what he instilled in me. It's like, you know, that dishwasher is the hardest working person in the building. And so the first person you say hello to is that dishwasher, that busboy, that bar back, is your support team, and then you trickle up all the way to the general manager. They deserve it too. Yeah. And so be humble about it, because they're the backbone. And so that, with all the politics and all the procedures and everything that it took to open a restaurant, from handbooks to, you know, hiring practices and HR and marketing and funding and where do you get money? It's like, well, how much is the project going to cost? So banking was a big thing, putting the team together, and then you got to learn how to have them mesh well, you know, and then all the way to the grand opening. So that's what I really learned about him. Where Jose Andres, everything was established. He wasn't opening a lot of restaurants. He was already big in the city in Washington, D.C., and he always inspired to be more, but I wasn't a part of that, you know. Yeah. So that's where my life took me, and that's what I wanted. I wanted to learn not just the four walls, but what's outside the four walls.
So you had two kind of paths to learning: an established career chef with solid, stable stores that were making money, / another restaurant group that was just, you know, procedures, handbooks, expansion, duplication, simplicity, teamwork.
Yep.
That's a great education right there. To be honest.
And to simplify it, it goes from a mom and pop to a very corporate setting. But you know, what I brought to the table with Richard was, you know, how do we mesh both?
Yeah.
You know, is it possible? So we studied the Darden groups, you know, that own the Seasons 52 and the Yard Houses, and we studied the mom and pop restaurants. Wow, look at that employee, super happy, they're always smiling, but not in Darden. It's like, well, how do we take best for both worlds? And that's why he blew up, because it starts with him. I mean, he just has a magnetic personality. And you know, to this day, I still talk to him, and we want to do something next year together, something very fine dine. And I think we will.
Nice.
Because now I'm established. You know, this is what I wanted. I wanted to be established, and I wanted to contribute more than just like my hard-earned work and my dollar. I wanted to contribute a voice. Yeah. I want to be 51% when I partner up with him and have him be the minority. Sure. And you know, that'll be a big accomplishment. This is a man that owns 50+ restaurants now.
Wow.
And for him, you know, to come to me and say, hey, you know, I want to be a part of this. Let's do something. You know, the vision is still there and so forth.
Would you consider him a mentor of yours?
Yes, both of them.
Would you recommend, so if someone's watching this right now, and they have big aspirations, would you recommend them find and seek somebody to help mentor them?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had the opportunity, my broker here in town, my exclusive broker here in town that, we're very close friends as well. He does a lot of mentorship too. And he has a client in Greenville, North Carolina. And it's a family. She's the chef. The husband is the operator. And they want to grow to the second unit. And so he knew that I could do a little bit of mentoring. And I had the opportunity to do that for the first time to another restaurateur.
That's cool.
And they were looking to expand. They're looking to expand and so forth. So they came down for a couple hours, showed them both brands, and they're super pumped now. Now they're like, that's what I needed to hear. It's like another person in that same field. In my position, I have a little bit more money. Now I can expand to the second unit. The second unit is the hardest. The first one, there's so much passion, love. You're there scrubbing the floors, the corners, the baseboards, the ceiling tiles, making sure everything is excellent. You want to keep that, as you grow. But the second one is like, how do I duplicate myself? Now it's really important about the team.
That's so funny you say that, because I had done a podcast with another client of mine, and they have multi stores, and he was saying that the hardest was to go from 1 to 2, then from 2 to 3 to 4. He said just the thought of not being in control of everything and having everything, but once you can break out of that mold a little bit, and okay, you know what, we can do this. I have a good team. I have good, we can share. I mean, I was like, that's so interesting. You said that without me even asking.
And I didn't do this on my own. I have my wife to thank. I have my business partners to thank. The Carbajal family. The Burns family, the Lemus family, now bringing on other business partners, the Romero family, and so forth. So, our key to success is our team as we grow. And we won't grow until we have more team members. And so the strategy is we want to put a managing partner in every unit. And give them a piece of the pie. Make them work for it, and if they do extremely well, they can continue to grow and have a little bit more in all the units. And it's the Darden effect. The Seasons 52 in the yard houses, where their general managers are not called general managers; they're called managing partners.
Gotcha.
And they give them a percentage of the business, literally the bottom line. Without putting anything in. So I learned that very exclusively from the beginning, and I know that for us to continue to grow, and for me, I can't duplicate myself. I mean, we have, by the end of the year, we'll have 7 units. And there's just no way. I mean, yesterday I only spent time in 2 units and in our corporate office. And then I thought to myself, I could have had that 1 extra hour. I could have gone to a third one. But at one point you have to say, like, I have to trust my team. My general managers, my directors, my business partners. And so, that's where the growth, we're investing in our foundation right now.
Okay, so you're learning, you want to do your own thing, you've realized that. Let's fast forward. How'd you end up in Charlotte? How did Que Onda, give us a little history of your actual brand and your first restaurant.
So, Washington, D.C., working for Richard Sandoval, again, looking at the bottom line, I got to do this for myself. But I knew in Washington, D.C., it was going to be nearly impossible, because the funding that you need in Washington, D.C., the cost of square footage, just the cost of employees is extremely high. And especially during that time, in 2012 through 2014, the economy is booming, everything is expensive. So I told my wife, I said, right now I'm the National Director of Operations. Richard's office to this day is in Denver, Colorado, so I would spend weekdays in Denver, Colorado, but I had the option of traveling direct to Denver, Colorado from Washington, D.C. every Monday and coming back direct every Friday. But then I always thought about, how do I stretch the dollar? I was like, if I have a connection flight, I'll save a couple $100. So I said, Richard, there's a way for us to cut back on travel by doing connection flights. Oh, but you spend time. I'm like, Richard, it's okay. I still get there on time. I'll just wake up a little earlier. He's like, wow, you're always thinking about how to stretch the dollar.
Dang.
So I would always, to this day, I have an account with American Airlines, and American Airlines has a huge hub in Atlanta and now past 10 years in Charlotte.
Uh-huh.
And so I would always connect in Charlotte, and then connection flight to Denver, Colorado.
Okay.
Bad weather, cancel flights. I'd always stay at the Marriott right in front of Que Onda Uptown.
Yeah.
And I would go explore. Hey, call Paola, my wife. I'm staying in Charlotte tonight, so I got to go somewhere to eat. And then my entrepreneurship side would always say, yeah, I'm not going to go across the street to, to the chain restaurants. I'm going to go to the mom and pops and check out the city.
Yeah.
Rent a car, go to the suburbs.
Yeah. And
started learning the city. And
okay.
Amazing schools. And in 2014, like everyone knows, to now, cost of a home half the price.
Yeah. Twice
the size. And so immediately I fell in love. And then the schools were amazing. Union County, Cabarrus County, and so forth. And I said, I found the place. And she goes, are you sure? So in 2014, I said, yeah, let's do it. The wife's always been the one pushing me. She's the backbone. A lot of people see this face, but really right behind me, the one really calling the shots is her. And she's like, all right, let's do it. And I was like, wait. I was hoping we can think about it for a year or two. And she's like, no, let's do it now.
Nice.
It's hot right now on the plate. It's hot. It's about to burn.
Yeah.
Let's do it. So I was like, all right. Put the house for sale. Came back from a small cruise in the Bahamas for 2 weeks. Our realtor calls us during the cruise. You have 6 offers on the house, and you have a really good offer. What do you want to do? Paola's like, give me the phone. Sell it. Sold it while we're in the Bahamas. And I was like, oh my God, this is happening, And so I started, getting a little scared about it and the move and everything. Oh my God, this and that is big deal. I got to tell Richard. And so got back, literally started packing. Needed to cut back on expenses because the little bit of money we made from the sale of the house had to go towards opening our first restaurant. And on top of that, Paola's parents lived with us, and they helped us remodel that home so we can make more money on it. So that was the way that we partnered up with her parents. They would remodel the home, put the money on the home while I was traveling and just paying for the mortgage. And so that kind of balanced out the original partnership with her parents. Yeah. And so there we are packing, made 3 trips to Charlotte on U-Hauls, went back, 3 trips. I remember it was 2 weeks worth of just going back and forth, while I'm still working, mind you. So, it's a situation that, again, humbled me, and another beginning starts.
Real quick, I want to point this out. I think there's a really good point to be made here about the power of just making the decision and just sticking with it. A lot of times there's a lot of people with personalities that are very just detailed and analytical, and they have to know in the phrase analysis paralysis, like you want to analyze so much that you're frozen and you can't make a decision. That sounds like Paola helped you let's go. This is our dream. This is what we've wanted. You've talked about this forever. You now have the experience. Yeah. Let's not sit on our hands. Let's go. I think there's a lot to be said about that.
And my belief in family and marriage are very evident with her. And, I learned that from my parents. My parents have been married for 30 plus years. And so for me, it was a situation where it's actually reality, what she tells me. She goes, behind every strong man, CEO, president, owner, there's a woman behind that. Yeah. And the finesse, the character. Yeah. And I'm just like, it's absolutely true. And it just, it's one of those situations that honestly, without her, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So road trips.
So road trips. So first location is where?
First location, Huntersville.
Okay.
Highland Creek.
Highland Creek, Huntersville. Okay.
So we acquired that. Worked it for a year.
How was that? Was it difficult? I mean, give us some specifics about the start. Yeah. Was it hard? Was it easier than you thought? Was it harder than you thought? And it's your first one by yourself?
I want to say that it was a lot of passion. So it seemed very easy. It seemed very natural. I knew a lot about the business. My wife stepped in as the acting general manager, and my father-in-law was the other business partner, was the other manager. So it was really easy to manage them. Yet I was still working for Richard.
Oh, okay. So you're still working with him.
I'm still working with Richard. You know, and I told Richard, hey, I have a restaurant in Charlotte. However, I think I can still manage both. And I knew it was the first restaurant, so I knew we couldn't pay big salaries to be able to afford homes here and so forth. So I said, I'll stay with my job, and I'll treat my restaurant as another unit that I manage.
Okay.
And so I managed a lot of my first location with my wife and my business partner, her father, Mario, remotely. I'd come on the weekends, spend Saturdays there, and just make sure everything was done.
Okay.
And they did a phenomenal job because I had systems in place that I had to manage remote because I was in 16 cities. And these general managers would report to me, so I had to have a good system in place for that reporting. So a lot of virtual, a lot of go-to-meetings, a lot of Zooms. Now it's called Zoom. So I learned how to manage that first unit like I was managing one of Richard's restaurants.
Interesting. Okay.
But then at one point, we paid attention to all the details. We cleaned up the restaurant. We did extremely well. Money started to come in, and I was like, hey, we need to save this for the second unit.
Yeah.
Still working for Richard.
So you were already thinking about unit 2.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think your thought of expansion has a lot to do with the vision of Richard?
Yeah.
Because his goal was 16 to 32. That's a pretty impressive
100%.
Scope and vision that the guy had, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I knew that for a better lifestyle for my partners, myself, and my team, I know the formula. We have to continue to grow.
Yeah.
We have to continue. I'm not doing this to sell. I'm doing this for my team.
Yeah.
I don't want my business partners working 50, 60, 70 hours a week. I want them now to be in our corporate office making executive decisions and having directors of finance, directors of catering, directors, of branding, directors of all those things,
Doing
for
well,
them,
making money, having
making
some time.
money, overseeing top, and then having directors of operations, regionals, and having general managers. That's what I did, and so the vision is there. And it doesn't happen with 2 or 3 or even 4 restaurants. It happens beyond that.
Yeah.
And so investing from bottom up is kind of what I was taught, and I applied that. And so restaurant 2's got to come quick. So I spoke to my broker, National Properties.
Yep.
Shout out to Sherman and Scott, good guys. They immediately found location 2.
Where at?
Uptown. And I was extremely, and this was 2016. Early 2016. Okay. I was extremely skeptical about Uptown because big lunches, right? No dinners, right? At that time, Uptown Charlotte wasn't an area where they were investing in apartments and condos and parking.
It's a whole different beast
light
now
rail.
than it was back then.
Oh, yeah.
7 years ago.
Oh, yeah. Now Uptown is our flagship. So we kept going back and looking at this restaurant. And then one day, we went on a Sunday, to leave our aunt to the airport. And we said, hey, let's just grab a martini and the location we're looking at, and let's just give it one more look.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of us. It was kids, and so forth. We sat in the patio, and it just so happens it was a Mexico friendly match at Bank of America Stadium on a Sunday. We went there around 3. The game was letting out, and I see this massive amount of people walking in the city. And so I was like, there it is.
It was sold.
I was like, there it is. So the way the city is going to grow is going to be through events. And then I started seeing the cranes and the construction, and I was like, no, I got to ride this train. I got to be one of the first ones to ride this train in Uptown Charlotte and be one of the first to do Mexican.
Yeah.
The way that we do Mexican.
Yeah.
I had to.
Yeah.
And so I said, where do I sign? Went in. That restaurant, my partners and myself built it by hand. By hand. Everything hurt. And I have a saying, if it doesn't hurt, it's not for you. My brother just moved down here in November, and he brought his trailer down because, he's now our director of beverage. He was raising restaurants too with Jose Andres. And I helped him unpack. Got there super late, 2 a.m., waited for him, helped him unpack. It starts pouring. I mean, I've never seen it rain like this in Charlotte. And he's like, no, we're going to wait. And I was like, no, this hurts. This is meant to be for you to be here. So let's do it in the rain. And so that's my saying. And that's what happened to the Uptown location. Everything from the tabletops to the countertops to the paint to the light fixtures. We had good bones in that restaurant that had been 5 other restaurants in 6 years. No one had made it. And that's what I was scared about too.
Well, I mean, people in the restaurant industry know that. There's certain locations that it's like, dang, if it's been too many spots, then there's like a stigma about it that nothing will stick here. And, it just shows.
But I think for me, besides that day and the game letting out, I got to meet David Furman, huge architect here in Uptown Charlotte. Yeah. Huge developer. He's done multiple skyscrapers. And architect. His offices are right above us in the Uptown location. And so he's my landlord. And so he doesn't own a bunch of other stuff, commercial stuff that, my lease is 3 pages. And that leases are 50 plus pages.
Yeah.
It's 3 pages.
Simple.
I remember meeting him and he goes, listen, the bleeding's got to stop. 5 restaurants in 6 years. How much do you want to pay rent? And joking, I said, boom, X dollars. And he goes, that's really cheap, Manny. Sign. And I said, no. I got to give you a tour of Que Onda, the Highland Creek location. So gave him a little menu tour. And I was like, before you sold on me, look at my product and make sure you want it.
Wow. You wanted to make sure.
Yeah. I wanted to make sure the partnership worked. Because this is David Furman. You know what I mean? He's been doing commercial buildings in Charlotte for 30, 40 years. I mean, he has pictures in his office where you look at the skyline and then you look at his pictures and you're like, no, that can't be Uptown. So yeah, he owns that tower. He everything, design, architecture, construction, everything. He built it.
Wow.
And then they're condos now. So I wanted that relationship. He's an architect. I'm an architect. We see eye to eye, but I needed to sell my product before I signed anything.
Yeah.
And so we loved it. His wife Marilyn loves our sangria, and he's like, come to the office, show me your business plan. So I showed him my business plan, and at that time, my first restaurant wasn't called Que Onda. I actually had to keep it for 3 years with its original name because I had only put half down, and the other half I still owed the original owner. And so I always had the vision of Que Onda while I was still operating this, the second location. And eventually, once I paid that debt off, it was going to turn into a Que Onda. But I was like, I got to do Que Onda. 2016, present my business plan to David Furman. And it was actually going to be called Cuatro Cuates.
Okay.
Cuatro Cuates are 4 buddies, 4 business partners. Cuates, very Mexican word, means extreme, like brotherhood. Yeah. And so I presented the business plan and the skull and everything, and David looks at it. He goes, He said, man, I can't pronounce this. It can't be this.
Wow.
And I was like, really? Like, I'm the one signing the lease, bro.
You're like a little crush. You're like, what?
Yeah, I'm like, I spent a lot of time on this, developing this. He goes, I like everything else, but the name's got to go.
Okay.
So I'm like, all right, what do I do? Go back to the drawing board. And then I talked to my team, and I'm like, hey, we got to change the name. And I remember that day very specifically. We're in my kitchen counter. Yeah. And we're talking, the 4 of us, drinking tequila that we had just brought from Guadalajara. Smuggled, actually, in a bottle that was supposed to be tequila, but we put something else in there. And we're drinking this, and we're like, ¿Qué onda con este güey? Like, what's up with this guy? ¿Qué onda this? ¿Qué onda that? And I'm like,
that's it.
There it is. And everyone's looking at me like, what are you talking about? ¿Qué onda? I'm like, yeah, ¿qué onda with this guy? And I'm like, no, ¿qué onda tacos and tequila? They're like, yes. And I said, I'll do something better. My father-in-law's shape of his skull, that's going to be our logo. I hired a designer, did the shape of his skull, very elongated.
Wow.
And I said, we're going to make it very Mexican. We're going to put a gold tooth on it, fake mustache that my father-in-law has. And then we got to incorporate it to the first location, the Uptown location. So we're going to do panther blue flames around the skull. And we're going to put a crown for Queen City. Yeah. So I want to tie it back to the Panthers, and I want to tie it back to Queen City on that logo. So when you look at our logo, now you really understand it. We spend a lot of time on that with our team, you know, understanding the logo and where it begins. And so that's where the first Que Onda came.
I love that.
And immediately, I remember at that point it was the Charlotte Agenda. They kept walking by, and they one day knocked on the door, and they were like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "That's my first Mexican restaurant, second Mexican restaurant, but first Que Onda." And they were like, "We'll do a piece on you." And I was like, "Yeah, because I don't have money to pay for none marketing."
Yeah.
We didn't do any marketing. I did all the social media, just like picture here, picture that.
Yeah.
And they did a piece on us. You know, it's framed in my office. Blew up. I mean, we opened the doors. We had to hire twice the amount of the team.
Wow.
I remember prepping food till 4 a.m. My business partners just there day in and day out, and we were still operating the first location and focusing on this location, and this is a new brand.
Yeah.
So new logo, new business cards,
Yeah.
new website,
Yeah.
new everything,
Yeah.
right? And that's when I knew I got to get out of Richard. This is it. This is for real.
Yeah.
A month right before opening, I said, this is critical. I'm here. I mean, I got to do websites. I got to do this. And I was, at that point, literally managing 2 brands.
Yeah.
Because the original restaurant that I owned, it was still named that original name.
Sure.
And I wanted a website for that in the meantime while I was expanding the second brand. And so, Richard, thank you very much, I remember. And we were opening a restaurant in Snowmass, Aspen, Colorado. And we're driving up, and remember I told him, this is my 3 months notice. And he goes, I need more than that. I need like 6 months. And I was like, all right, I'll do this. I'll work remote from Charlotte, only remote. I won't travel but once a month in the meantime, maybe twice a month, to the closest city of Charlotte, Atlanta, DC, Philly, and I'll report back to you. And I'll manage everything remotely, which I already been.
Yeah.
He goes, done, but stick around. Cool. It's doing both things still.
Wow.
Still doing both things. Time was limited. Boys are in grade school. Paola's working her ass off. It was a chapter in our life that, you know, really taught us how to be very organized at home, at work, in our marriage, with our family.
Communication, the whole thing.
Communication, my business partners, which are my family as well. And I was like, wow, we're doing it.
Yeah.
Took off completely. And then 2017 Matthews, 2018. My goal was 10 restaurants in 10 years, 1 per year. So the third unit, Matthews, 2017. 2018, University City. Took off 2019 because I wanted a vacation.
Sure.
And then obviously 2020 hit. We had two projects in 2020, almost at a letter of intent stage in Rock Hill, and another one in Charlotte. And obviously COVID had another idea.
Yep.
And so we had 4 units at that time when COVID hit, and so we had to like structure down.
Sure.
And I said, okay, this is
regroup.
where we are.
Yep.
We've grown to 4, but now this is where we are with COVID. And so another stage, you know, another chapter in life with COVID. And again, it's almost like, you know, I'm not a religious person, but I believe, and my church is here and here. You know, your temple is in your heart, and karma's up here. So that's, you know, what I believe in to be religion. I believe in a higher being, but it's every time we're growing too quickly and not investing. Humble down. Here's a challenge for you. Humble down. Here's another challenge for you. And, you know, that's what really has kept all of this afloat. You know, COVID was a tester for everybody, as you know.
Yeah.
I mean, your family.
Yep. Same
you know,
thing.
same thing.
Let's talk about your second brand.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay, Fresa, you know, first location you guys opened up last year.
October.
You know, different concept, different vibe, different feel.
Yeah. So it's kind of where COVID had that idea. So during COVID, the restaurants, you know, had to go to go. Yeah. And our food, Mexican food, doesn't travel well. Yeah. The nuisance and the flavors and the smells of chiles and nuts and all the base ingredients of Mexican food does not travel. It has to be eaten hot or cold.
Right there.
Right then and there. So we didn't have a lot of packaging. We didn't have a lot of to-go. We didn't do the DoorDash. We didn't do delivery. None of that stuff. It was just come pick it up, and it's on you.
Yeah.
Here it is. I opened it up for you. It's steaming, nice and hot.
Yeah.
But then I got in, during COVID, we had to do DoorDash. We had to do the Uber Eats. We had to do that third delivery. And so I said to myself, well, if I'm going to learn this, I'm going to learn it extremely well, like I did everything else.
Yeah.
The ins, the outs, the negotiating, the commissions, At one point,
everything.
we almost got cars to do it ourselves. But then the liability behind it, I was like, let's wait. We're just starting on this.
Yeah.
So the 4 restaurants we're doing to go.
Yep.
To go, pick up, to go, pick up. I said, that's it. We got to do something fast casual. Yeah. This is where the world is going. I mean, look at Chick-fil-A now. They don't even have dining rooms. The new restaurants don't even have dining rooms anymore. They have drive-thrus. Yep. They invest on land as opposed to the building. Yep. And so I said to myself, we got to do something Mexican, taqueria, and we have to elevate Que Onda now. When we launched Que Onda in 2016, we launched very modern Mexican. We didn't have queso dips. We had queso fundido, the melted cheese that you make your own quesadillas out of. Yeah. Very Mexican cheeses. And we didn't have queso dip, but people were like, how do you not have queso dip? Charlotte wasn't ready for us. So we had to kind of go Tex-Mex a little bit. Yeah. What people understood. Fajitas, enchiladas, quesadillas, and queso dip. Yeah. So I was like, all right.
The basics.
That's not us.
Yeah.
So, but I said, you know what? Let's learn from this. So the brand had stayed like that up to 4 units. And I said, no, now it's time. Charlotte understands in 2022. Charlotte understands we have to elevate Que Onda, and this is where Que Onda is now. And then we have to introduce a taqueria, get rid of all the tacos in Que Onda, go entrees, appetizers, very authentic ingredients in a modern flair, modern dishes with Mexican touches. Yeah. And I said, that's what I know how to do best. That's what my people know how to do best. Now's the time to do it. And sure enough, that's where Que Fresa came. And that story, that name, there's another really cool story about it. I'm in the couch. We're ready to launch this. We have a menu that we thought about, 15 tacos, 20 tacos, bunch of appetizers. But I want a bar. I don't want just something fast casual, but I want a bar inside with a tequila bar and service at the bar. Yeah. So it's a hybrid, upper scale fast casual restaurant. And found the perfect location, right? And then now, this is like May, we're 2022. We're getting ready to open in October, and I'm thinking to myself, we don't have a name. Let me get with my graphic team, let me get with my partners. We could not come up with a name to it. Nothing would stick, And I was like, all right, let's go back to that counter in the kitchen. Yeah. Let's go back there, because that's where we made Que Onda. Yeah. Sitting there, my partners got late. They left. They're like, no, this is useless. I don't know. I'm going to leave it on you. My wife and I are sitting there drinking tequila. And we're like, we look around and our TV is on. My kid is flipping through Netflix. The Luis Miguel series on Netflix shows up. And I'm like, hey, we gotta watch that. We're like, hey, let's watch episode 1. Loved it. And I was like, he is the biggest fresa I've ever seen in my life. I was like, Luis Miguel is literally fresa number 1, besides you, my wife. And she's like, that's it. It's fresa, taqueria. And I was like, better yet, we're going to stick with the que. Yes. Que fresa, taqueria, and bar. And I was like, now I'm going to know what I have to do. I was like, you're the one that named it. I'm going to put your skull in the logo. And so if you look at her, but with Que Onda, it's looking dead on, right? Like this. Yeah. And with a feminine skull, I wanted to do it at 45 degrees so you can see more of the features of the skull and the angles. And I said, and I'm going to make sure that it's pink and purple. And so when you go to Que Fresa, it's pink and purple. It is. It's super fresa music, right? And you see my wife's face on the skull and a lot of murals and taqueria, and we have preppy tacos, and we have street tacos, a lot of appetizers behind that, some bowls and tortas, cool desserts, and then my dreams always keep bars, because that's where your money is going to come. Yeah. And so we added a bar in that location. They didn't have a bar. So that's where Fresa came from, opening in October, and it was a huge hit. huge hit.
Yeah.
To the point where the vice president of marketing and operations for Duke Energy would always go to Que Fresa the first couple months it opened, loved the brand. Their broker is one of my brokers on the side. They'd helped me open Matthews location, reopen Matthews location after COVID. She calls me up and she goes, hey, the vice president of marketing operations from Duke Energy, they're interested in having a Que Fresa in the new Duke Energy Center, 45 floors.
Wow.
And I was like, they're looking for us. I was like, let's do a meeting. So they looked at us and they said, we want Que Fresa. And so we signed it. We actually have a lease in place. It's been announced. Que Fresa 2 will open. We're getting keys this week or next week to the space. It's a cold shell right now, concrete. We have the floor plan, architecture's gone through. Now we're in engineering, so we should start construction July 1, 4 months, and then we should open later this year. That'll be the second Que Fresa. The third Que Fresa is on letter of intent right now, and we're looking at a lower south end.
Nice.
In the 6 Que Onda, we're looking at for 2025 in Dealworth. And then one of my business partners, Roger Lemos, he grew up in the restaurants that I grew up in with Jose Andres, and he spent more time with Jose. So his Spanish tapas background is tremendous. And so I went back to him last summer, and I said, we have to do a Spanish tapas restaurant, because that's where everything started. We have to do Spanish food. And he's like Jose Andres? I'm like Jose Andres. And so that's where our Spanish brand is going to come, and on that one, we're on letter of intent as well with David Furman in the same building, hopefully very soon.
Nice.
Not 100% concrete, but I think we can pull it off for
Heard it here first on the Paper Trails podcast.
Right? Exactly. Yeah, a lot of people want exclusives on that one.
I love that.
I'm not going to give them a lot of details just yet what it's going to be, but
I mean, listen, Manny, I think it's very impressive what you and your family have done. I mean, honestly, coming from family restaurants and what my parents and my uncles have done, and opening up to 7 locations, they have currently 4, and seeing what you're doing and at the pace and the team and the structure and the foundation, it's impressive. It really is. It's my hat is tipped off to you for what you guys are doing, and you're making a splash in Charlotte and the suburbs, and your brand and your food and your service and the experience that every patron comes in. I love it. I love it. So we'll wrap up. What are some parting thoughts, some words of encouragement to budding entrepreneurs, maybe people in their career that just want to take things more serious and get promoted, just people that have ambition and passion in their heart just like you? Yeah. What are some thoughts and some words of encouragement you can give to them? So,
I always go back to being humble, learning the business in and out. Everyone's story is going to be different. Ours sure as hell is. Not a lot of people get different chapters in their life and opportunities, and we did. My saying is, whatever it is you're going to do in life, you're going to cut grass, you're going to, plumb sinks, whatever it is that you do in life, the beginning is super critical. You have to go all in. You have to be there. It's the saying in Spanish, que tiene tienda, que la tienda. If you have a store, you have to be in the store. Yeah. And really, there's no secret to being an entrepreneur. It's just a lot of hard work, and the hard work pays off. My day starts with my kids at 7:30 in the morning. I'm in the restaurants 9 to 10 o'clock, and last night I was home at 10:30 p.m. But I don't count hours. I look at that as an opportunity every day to inspire, to work for my team. And lastly is all about your team. So if you have one employee, you have a team. Yep. We're up to 200 employees right now. Wow. And I always try to achieve a way to inspire them, motivate them. We're nobody without our team, from that, like I said from the beginning, from that dishwasher all the way up to a director of beverage or director of service. And the day I stop doing that is the day that we have to sell. We have to continue to inspire, motivate, and if we're going to do this, I always told myself, if I'm going to do restaurants, I'm going to do it to the top. And so if you're going to do plumbing, if you're going to do electrical, do it to the top. Have a vision. Write it down.
Be the best.
And be the best at it. And if the best means countless hours, if the best means giving the most discounts in the beginning to all your clients because you're doing electrical work, that's what it means. Have a plan. Yeah. Have a vision and share it with your team and make sure your team's a part of it.
I love that. I couldn't have said it better myself. Appreciate you, Manny. This was so incredible. You know, the Que Hospitality, the brand, the concepts, the history, the traveling, you know, Paola, the whole thing. I mean, honestly, it's very inspiring. Your whole story is inspiring, and I hope you guys really enjoyed it. You know, episode 2, season 3. If you haven't tried out, there's a Que Onda or Que Fresa somewhere near you. Go visit, support, and a lot of things to come. So anyway, with that, we'll see you guys soon on the next episode.
The restaurants you love, the food you crave, and the people that make it all happen. We tell their stories on the Paper Trails podcast with Albemarle Paper Supply.